Okay, nothing personal to the commenter that said this, but that said this old cliche and disagreed with the fact that I say we militarized Japan. Okay, it was at peace for 2 centuries before we, specifically us. Not it just happened, everybody was militarized in Japan at the time. That old line is just not true. The American people were being told they were isolationist, but they were helping out a few local people around. Okay, look. I went and I'm reading to you the account from the U.S. military, the U.S. Navy Museum, .mil. This is their version, okay? Their version. Well, I will be commenting now. You'll be able to tell. You can read it yourself anywhere. Perry and the Opening of Japan. Commodore Perry and the Opening of Japan. On March 31st, 1854, representatives of Japan and the United States signed a historic treaty. A United States naval officer, Commodore Matthew Calbraith Perry, negotiated tirelessly for several months with Japanese officials to achieve the goal of opening the doors of trade with Japan. Listen to how the negotiation worked. But first, for 2 centuries, Japanese ports were closed to all but a few Dutch and Chinese traders. The United States hoped Japan would agree to open certain ports so American vessels could begin to trade with the mysterious island kingdom. In addition to interest in the Japanese market, America needed Japanese ports to replenish coal and supplies for the commercial whaling fleet. On July 8, 1853, 4 black ships, warships, the biggest fleet of warships ever to travel so far at the time, led by USS Powhatan and commanded by Commodore Matthew Perry, anchored at Edo Bay, Tokyo. Never before had the Japanese seen ships steaming with smoke. Yes, there's Japanese accounts of this encounter. They thought the ships were giant dragons puffing smoke. That's a quote, U.S. military. They did not know that steamboats existed and were shocked by the number and size of the guns on board the ships. Do you detect a subtext? They refused Perry to come on board, and according to Japanese observers, Perry threatened war. He said he could bring 50, he had 50 of these ships that could come right away, and another 50 were in California. Just had guns to blow up port cities, no problem. At age 60, Matthew Perry had a long and distinguished naval career. But we were isolationists. What the hell would a naval career be doing in the first half of the 1800s? Weird. He knew that the mission to Japan would be his most significant accomplishment. He brought a letter from the President of the United States, Millard fucking Fillmore, to the Emperor of Japan. He waited with his armed ships and refused to see any of the lesser dignitaries sent by the Japanese that were trying to go, hey, no, we just want a closed door, you sure? Insisting on dealing only with the highest emissaries of the Emperor. The Japanese government realized that their country was in no position to defend itself against a foreign power. Thus hinged the negotiation, so-called. And Japan could not retain its isolation policy without risking war. According to the U.S. military, Japan knew it could not retain its isolation policy without risking war. On March 31st, 1854, after weeks of long and tiresome talks, Perry received what he had so dearly worked for, a treaty with Japan. In other words, it took them months to agree, even though they were being threatened with cannons. The treaty provided for peace and friendship between the United States and Japan. It lasted way long. Opening 2 ports to American ships at Shimoto and Hakodate. Help for any American ships wrecked on the Japanese coast and protection for shipwrecked persons. Permission for American ships to buy supplies, coal, water, and other necessary provisions in Japanese ports. Interesting. And what did the Japanese get out of it? I don't see where we agreed for their shipwrecks, and maybe the military just left that out. Oh, peace and friendship between the United States. That's what we had to offer. hey, we could not be an asshole. Or maybe we could. What do you think? What do you think? After the signing of the treaty, the Japanese invited the Americans to a feast. The Americans admired the courtesy and politeness of their hosts and thought very highly of the rich Japanese culture they wanted to get a finger on. Commodore Perry broke down barriers that separated Japan from the rest of the world. And then they became an empire because they took on Western habits and realized they needed some fucking steam warships too, or they were going to be turned into the Philippines. Today, the Japanese celebrate his expedition with annual Black Ship festivals. Perry lived in Newport, Rhode Island, which also celebrates a Black Ship festival in July. Yay! You can't blame the youth of today. Christmas comes with a brand new gun. Black Ship Festival in July. You guys are fucked up. Okay, in Perry's honor, Newport has become Shimoda's sister city. Yeah. And we encouraged and told them to have a Monroe Doctrine, a Japanese Monroe Doctrine, where they should control everything. Fight Korea, they'd been at peace with. They'd have been at peace with themselves. Yeah. Just face it.